Hello, Gen Max. We're going to be talking about a topic that may make you feel uncomfortable, but is definitely something that you want to have this conversation. And we're talking about dying today, and specifically dying in Mexico, because if you spend the rest of your life in Mexico, fact is you're going to die there. And it's not going to be some cartel violence or anything like that. You're probably going to die of natural causes, but things are different in Mexico than they are in the United States and Canada. And so I'm doing a whole series of videos about this topic, talking with attorneys and funeral homes and different folks. But today I have Loretta Downs, and she is a death positive educator / death doula. And she's going to tell us the 3 things that you really need to do before, or really need to start doing now to get ready for that. It's coming, for that day that it shows up. So Loretta, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, and thank you for the invitation, Brighton. I really appreciate being able to talk about dying and death in positive terms. In fact, that's my mission in life, to create these opportunities.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this across Mexico. I know you've done a lot of speaking, especially in the Ajijic area, but maybe you can give us just a little bit of your background, because you've gone beyond the Ajijic area and you've had audiences in the hundreds of folks who are coming to hear what you have to say about this. So maybe just give us a little bit of your background.
I began working with dying in 1985 when my first friend died of AIDS, and it continued. I got swept up in the AIDS crisis and did a lot of volunteer work, spent 6 years on an AIDS ward in a hospital. Then my mother moved to long-term care just when I retired at 50, and I spent 20 years in and out of long-term care facilities and learned so much about dying and supporting the dying. I was a hospice volunteer for 20 years. And then I moved to Mexico in Ajijic, this beautiful community that draws some impressive, I call us the Olympians of aging.
Very nice.
Here, we're living our dream, and we come down healthy. And as you said, most of us want to stay here and finish our lives here. So I'm supporting that process by educating. I give a lot of talks. I've spoken all over town, and I've spoken all over the United States too, at law conferences and hospice conferences and nursing home conferences. So I know that, the American society is death denying, and now with the medical technologies the way they are, and they're also aggressive in Mexico, we're living longer, and we're not always living well at the end of our lives. And in Mexico, it is different. The hospital system's different. The law system is different. So we really need to know what those differences are if we're going to live here forever.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing this message broadly, and hopefully this is going to reach a heck of a lot of people who are thinking about moving to Mexico, which is a great time to start thinking about this, by the way, or who are already in Mexico. You maybe have a little bit of catching up to do, but you're going to give us 3 things that folks can start doing now. So why don't you start with the first thing that you recommend for folks?
The first thing I recommend is to talk about dying. I mean, if we're not accepting our mortality, we're not going to face it smoothly or easily. And one of the things I think is really important is to have these conversations. We have a death cafe here that meets monthly and is very active in the high season, because we do get snowbirds. The high season, there will be 40 people that'll show up, just sitting around talking about dying. And I've got people having death over dinners where they invite friends with advance notice. You're coming to talk about dying, no surprises, and normalizing the end of our lives. And until we do that, we're just going to keep it. It's a medical event. When dying is a spiritual process with medical implications. And we need the time to be putting all of the things together emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, before we have a critical illness.
Yeah, and it's so important. Just last night, I was talking to a friend who he helped someone through the dying process in Mexico. He got a call from a friend saying his wife had just passed away unexpectedly here in La Paz, and he was kind of the best friend to come and help with this process. But so he's definitely very interested in this series that I've talked to him. I've talked to talking to probably 24 people about this topic over the last 2 years. And so I'm really excited to get this series started, getting out to folks. But one thing that he mentioned was it cost him close to $5,000 to change the beneficiary on his fideicomiso. And this is something that doesn't exist in Ajijic, but it exists anywhere near the water or near the U.S. border. And I had no idea it was so. It's a necessity to have a beneficiary in your fideicomiso. So this is your bank trust for your home if you live near the water or near the border, and it's required. And it's something that just gets handled through the closing process on your house. But if you want to change your beneficiary, I guess potentially you have to start over from scratch. So it's little things like that I think having these conversations, and that just happened to be a conversation we were having, but having purposeful conversations with people about death, because quite frankly, we have friends who've experienced it here in Mexico, and they can say like, oh, this is what went well. This is what didn't go well. This is what I wish I would have done in advance. This is what, we were able to get done that day. This is the person who helped me so much to learn from our community.
Yeah. Yes, it's much the same here. You have to work with a notario to get into the house processed. And here, if you have joint ownership, there's no right of survivorship in Mexico. So first of all, this is a problem of abundance. So we need to take care of the fact that we all have so much stuff. And property is one thing. And it does cost thousands of dollars to have a dead person removed from a deed on a house. So you need to talk to your notario when you're setting up a will. If you own property, you have to have a will in Mexico. And beneficiaries on bank accounts are another things, and on investment accounts. The different banks have different processes for distributing the money. I know I have 2 bank accounts here, and both of them require that the beneficiary comes present to pick up the check and with a copy of the death certificate, and it can take a couple of weeks to process the check. So that beneficiary has to plan to be here for 2 weeks. That's a complication. I recommend a lot of, I have a co-signer. A lot of us here, and probably where you are single. And that creates a whole different end-of-life experience. I say we're all just walking each other home. But friends get very involved because we've left our primary families and sources of support. So we have to create new families, which is pretty easy to do. We old white people find each other pretty easily.
It's true. Yeah. And one thing I've noticed is I'm in my mid-50s, and I live half time in Mexico and half time in the United States. And in the United States, my friends are much younger than they are down here because I'm hanging out with a bunch of people. There's a lot of people that are retired that move here. There's more and more people that are younger that are moving here. But my friend group is older. And so I've had a number of friends pass away down here. Whereas up in the US, my friend group, I don't think I've lost anyone in years. So it's much more common here because we are amongst a group of people that are closer to the end of life, I guess. So,
and it's a tighter community.
Yes.
North, we're all mixed in. It's a much more chronologically varied community that we have. Yeah, we had people in their 50s have heart attacks and die in the past couple of weeks. So it happens. I just wrote an article for our local magazine. It happens. And it's important to be prepared. And any piece of paper that we complete that has to do with mortality helps us make friends with death. And we need to. I'm 76, and last year 7 of my friends died, and not one of them knew they were going to die the year before. And preparation is so important, and it's intimate. It brings you closer to the people involved. Here we have to have a medical directive, Because if I went to the hospital and I were unable to speak for myself in critical condition, someone else has to speak for me. And the hospitals want to know, this is in the States too, who's the person with the papers? And you have to go to a notario to complete a medical directive. I suggest you name 2 or 3 people. At least one of them has to be able to be in the hospital with you, because we need somebody in the hospital with us, directing our care and having the very personal conversation with the people you give your power of attorney to for healthcare, because they could potentially make some decisions that will invite your death.
Mm-hmm.
We have to figure out what the limits are. So this paperwork you do with the notario is so important. And once you do it, it's like, oh boy, it's done. Now I can live. So I very much encourage all of this legal preparation. And then you get into the emotional preparation with the conversations and being with other people you care about, supporting them through the end of life.
Okay, so point number 1 is to start conversations with friends. And before we move on to point number 2, I want to mention the sponsor of this video, the Complete Mexico Relocation Guide. It will save you a lot of time, energy, and headaches on your move to Mexico. The Complete Mexico Relocation Guide is an easy-to-follow online guide that gives you the most important basic steps for moving to Mexico. It's written by several experts, and it's consistently being kept up to date. So it doesn't matter if you're moving in 2 years or in 2 months, you can count on the guide being up to date. What I really like is that you get lifetime access to the guide, and because it's online, you only need your login and passwords to access it from any device, as long as you have Wi-Fi or internet access. One thing that I've learned in my years of living in Mexico is that bureaucracy can be a nightmare to deal with, even if you speak fluent Spanish. So another nice bonus to the guide is that it also includes a directory of vetted contacts across Mexico that can help you make your move a lot easier. They not only cover the residency visa process, but also real estate, healthcare, insurance, moving, and also things like estate planning and wills. Plus, they have a list of recommended contacts nationally and across specific cities of Mexico to help you with all these topics. They also offer private relocation tours in over 60 cities across Mexico. And unlike a tourist tour, a relocation tour focuses on the ins and outs of what living as a local will be like in that city. You won't have to worry about driving, parking, or navigating that city. All you have to do is sit back and learn from your passenger side. They have a ton of positive reviews online, so check them out. Now let's get back to Loretta and the second important step to take when preparing for death in Mexico.
Doing the paperwork. I mean, we've spent our lives accumulating assets and plans for them. And I think it's very important not leaving it to accident or fate to have those distributed after you die well. I mean, people are having celebrations of life and giving things away at their parties. I love that. I encourage people to take pictures of your most important things and write who you want to have them. And again, this just reminds us that we are mortal and we can be grateful for all the things that we've accumulated and that we prize. It's a process of building gratitude for the lives we've lived. And I know at the end of life, the people that have the gentlest transition are in gratitude, and that builds peace. So taking care of business is really important, and it's just different in Mexico, and it's costly. You have to prepare to pay for it. Although I have to say, I believe lawyers in America now are making hundreds of dollars an hour, so it's not that. And if you have property in both America or Canada and Mexico, you need to have separate wills.
Yeah, that is a great point. And I will be doing a video with an attorney as Katten and I prepare our wills in Mexico. We have wills up in the United States, but we don't in Mexico. So it's something we need to work on. And I want to just kind of have a shout out here to this guide called Adios Amigos. I'll have a link down below to how you can get this guide, and also a link to anything Loretta is able to provide from the Ajijic area. There's a lot of resources out there. What I like about this one is it does take you through kind of everything you this is kind of like getting all your documents together and then going through and saying like, well, which funeral home do you want to work with when you pass away? What is your attorney's name? What is your life insurance? What is your auto insurance? Your homeowner's insurance? Who are your children? Your personal belongings and your wishes and bills to pay. And just there's so much information. For me, I'm the one who handles kind of like making life work here in Mexico. And I don't think Kat would know how to pay the electric bill. And what's the password to that? Because we do pay it online. So this is a great guide. And like I said, there'll be a link. I don't know if they have this available electronically. This actually comes out of Todos Santos in Baja California Sur, but there are some electronic things that you have too, Loretta, correct?
Yes, we in Ajijic, and Ajijic is a population, depending on where you read, of 10,000 to 30,000 expats living in the lakeside, Lake Chapala area. So there are a lot of us. And I was at a symphony concert the other day, and there were about 450 people there. It was fabulous. And I looked around, and we were all senior. So this is a place we need this information. And we have great medical care. I think medical care in Mexico is fabulous. Like everywhere else, things don't always go well everywhere, but it's very good. You have to pay for it. Some insurance is available. But anyhow, we are developing a community of death doulas here. Mm-hmm. Have been trained by Wilka Roig, who's the executive director of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in San Miguel. Have you met her?
I have not met her.
Okay, I'm going to send her contact information. And there are a dozen of them who want to be working with people. We've created a website, this is worth checking. The Lake Chapala End of Life Care community is the Lake Chapala End of Life Care.org. Mm-hmm. And our doula profiles, and there's a link for resources. And we've posted 10 documents like the ones that you're talking about, where people can download them and record all the key information that some next of kin is going to need. Mm-hmm. There's also articles on it and more information about dying in Mexico. So that's the Lake Chapala End of Life Care.org is the website.
Thank you for that. There'll be a link to that down below.
Yeah, and we're working with right now I'm working with a couple. One of them has terminal cancer, and we've teamed up as a pair of doulas working with them. And that's also to protect ourselves, because we're all retired, and we need time for ourselves too. So the doula services are expanding. Mexico doesn't have hospice care the way north of the border does, although we have really good care. The long-term care facilities here have kindness and compassion. I think the hospitals are hospitals. They medicalize illness and die. So you have to really know what matters most to you at the end of your life and make these decisions and communicate them.
And so, so your point is to do have these conversations and whatnot while you're still healthy, because this is going to take a lot of energy to go through and capture all of these things. One thing that we had to do here in Baja California Sur is get our marriage certificate apostilled. And so what this means is that we were married in Florida, and we had to get it apostilled by the state of Florida to say this is now an international document. Now, that's important here in Baja California Sur, but as I understand, it's not important in Jalisco.
Correct. It's not. There are the funeral homes here the process here is if someone dies, you call the doctor first. And our doctors give us their cell phone numbers. I don't know why they would do that, but they do.
It's amazing. They do that everywhere.
Yeah. And then you call the funeral home, or the doctor calls the funeral home, and they will pick up the body. If the doctor hasn't come to pronounce the deceased, the funeral home doctor will do that. And then the process starts. We have to be buried or cremated within 24 hours. So things move quickly. Another reason to have your friend group organized, because some people want to be present at death. And It's an important thing, that we doulas do a whole ceremony at death. We support the caregiver and any other. There can be. I've been at deaths where there were 5 caregivers present, all close friends, and they need some help at the end. So the care here at the end of life is, I would say, really good, and you can get in-home care affordably.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And that's probably more so easier in the Ajijic area than it is in other areas, but also available in other areas. It's just a little bit harder, a little more work to be done to find it.
Yeah, I met this couple Sunday, and I was there at 5:30, and at 7 o'clock I called a nursing service, and by 8:30 they had a hospital bed and an overnight nurse in the house.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah,
amazing.
village life.
Yes, awesome. Very nice. So, actually, I think this is going to be a good transition for us because as I was speaking with folks, I'm not sure if it was you or someone else, kind of gave the tip to talk to a doctor and see, what the process is. So, I called my doctor and said, hey, if I were to pass away or my wife were to pass away, should we call you? And she said, well, I would just have to call 911 because here in Baja California Sur, that's the process, is that the police and the emergency services have to come to the house. So it's all very dependent on which state you live in. So I think it's all very important to speak with your friends locally to see what their experience has been, because it's all different. An autopsy is required for people who die outside, or for foreigners who die outside of a hospital in Baja California Sur. So that's to be expected. The state picks up the body and takes it to the coroner, who does the autopsy, and then it's available for a funeral home to pick up. So everything is different. And this is just like the United States, I'm sure, too, state by state. So figure out what your process is, and then figure out how you want that process to go. Because although you need to call 911, in here, it might be better to call someone else first, to have someone who's bilingual and is familiar with the process at your house when the police arrive, so that they could get there and there's someone managing. So things like that are important.
Here we say don't call 911.
Mm-hmm.
If you call 911 here, the police are required to take the body to the morgue in Guadalajara, and they will take any identifying material like the laptop, the phone, and the wallet. And it gets very difficult to get them back and take weeks of processing. So, and most of us are dying at home. And if you die in the hospital, the funeral home will pick up the body here. But I'm living in a village. Ajijic alone has a population of 12,000 people. So we're a string of small villages, and there's still, the Mexican families are still very close. They haven't started, they're just starting to move out of town for opportunities. But mostly this is, I live in a village and people know each other. You walk down the street and people say, buenos dias, buenos tardes, buenas noches. I go to Guadalajara and it's not the same. It's a city where things are very different. So, and it is important to know what the rules and the laws are wherever you live in Mexico, because they are different.
Yeah. Okay. So point 1, talk to your friends. Point 2, start getting your documents prepared. I will have videos about preparing those documents, because there's medical directives, there's wills, there's all the passwords and things like that. So there's a lot to prepare. But what is point number 3, which I kind of started to preview a little bit?
The third part, first of all, network for a doctor. Find out which doctors your friends are working with and how comfortable they are with them. How good diagnosticians they are. And then you have to personally talk to your doctor about what matters most to you. Now, people say to me, oh, I just want to take a pill. There's no such pill. There's not. And in Mexico, terminal sedation is legal. Actually, it's legal everywhere in the world. So is voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. A lot of people, when they're late in a disease process, have no quality of life, and they're so miserable. And they're either just spending a lot of time going back and forth for treatments to a hospital, or they're sick at home. And a lot of people are saying, I just don't want to die this slowly. And they stop eating and drinking. It's free, it's available, it's legal, and you need caregivers. It's not something you can do on your own. And depending on how compromised your body is, it could take a few days or it could take a couple of weeks. But you're not hungry. Hunger is not an issue. Thirst becomes an issue. You have to take care of that. There's a lot of information online about it. It's called VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. And in the long-term care communities, people talk about it and it's done. Also, terminal sedation, which is legal everywhere in the world. It's not euthanasia. Euthanasia is something that a doctor provides a medication that causes death. Medical aid in dying, which is legal in America and Canada, is where in 11 states in America, the patient has to apply. They have to be within 6 months of dying. They have to get a prescription from a drugstore that's authorized to give it to you, and you have to mix it in a slurry and drink it yourself. And then there's terminal sedation. The intention of terminal sedation is to relieve the suffering. For instance, a person who's got terrible pain from cancer and it can't be remediated. A doctor will put you to sleep and you'll sleep until you die. You're not eating, you're not drinking, you're comfortable, people are taking care of you, you're surrounded by your loved ones. These are things you need to talk to your doctor about when you're facing the end of your life. And that's if you get diagnosed with something that's going to be serious, or if you're going in for a serious surgery for something, it's a conversation your doctor needs to know what matters most to you. And we're training our doctors. That's because most Mexicans do die at home, and they're surrounded by family. And they've been taking care of each other for centuries. We come out of this death-denying culture, and most of us die in hospitals north of the border. And that is changing because the baby boomers don't want to die the way our parents did.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I remember something like a very small percentage of people die at home, except for doctors. Doctors die at home because they know how to work the system in the United States, because they know they want to die at home and they know how to make it happen, versus a lot of other people end up dying in a hospital unintentionally. And also hospice care, which is one of the best things about the United States, I think, is hospice care. People tend to only be on it for a few days if they're eligible for 6 months. So people wait too long.
25% of hospice patients are there at home. It's hospice at home for less than a week. 25% and 50% for less than 17 days. That's because we don't want to face dying. We want to praying for a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Dying is a miracle. And once we start seeing that this transition of us, me, you, out of your body is miraculous. It's something that's required. I say we North Americans, first of all, we're all born with death holding our hand. Everybody. In North America, we want to pretend she's not there. We want to run away from her. Then we argue with her. And the Mexicans have learned to dance with death.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like it any more than we do. But they understand that it is a part of life. And they grieve the way we do. They have different rituals. And some of them are like Day of the Dead. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful ritual. Many of us here build ofrendas for loved ones. The Day of the Dead. And we certainly appreciate all the ofrendas that show up around town. It's just this awareness that death is part of life and that preparing for it makes us better people. The point of all this isn't the point of life isn't just to get more and have more. It's to build contentment and gratitude so that at the end of your life you can die in peace.
Awesome.
Ideally surrounded by loved ones in a location that you choose.
That is wonderful. So, and that is a perfect end to this part of the video. But I want to give people, your contact information and also why someone might want to reach out to you.
Sure. You can contact me through endoflifeinspirations.com. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy. I love emails. My email address is there, Loretta@eolinspirations.com. And there's just so much to learn. And now there are a lot of people, actually like you, Brighton, that are talking about dying publicly. They're blogging. Their death doulas only became organized in 2015. And now the International Association for End-of-Life Doulas does trainings. A nurse named Suzanne O'Brien does online trainings. There are a lot of training, and it's not only for people who want to professionally work with the dying. It's for us to learn what the heck dying involves. I mean, we need to in order to make it better. And it just being present for someone at the end of life, I mean, it's a privilege, and we can't all be there. I know some people go, oh, I miss my mom's death. She didn't want you there. You know, a lot of people want to die alone. They wait for us to leave the room. And the more we learn about what dying involves, there's a wonderful, I'm going to send you a couple links to people who have videos that do online training. It's just, I'm going to die one day, and I don't want to cause my loved ones any angst or guilt. I hear so many caregivers say, oh, I didn't do enough, when they've worn themselves to the bone taking care of somebody they love because they don't want to lose them.
Yeah. So true. And so, I mean, really, the reason that we're doing all of this is for the people that we leave behind. Creating these documents and making things easy for the people that we leave behind once we do leave is a gift to those who are still living.
Yeah, and I'm starting to give things away while I'm alive, including some of my assets. And, the kids need it now. I don't want to wait.
Yeah. Yes.
It feels so good.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, Loretta, and thank you all for watching. This is a great video. I'm really excited about this series of videos. So anything remaining that you want to add before we sign off?
Yes. The point of death is to teach us how to live well.
I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Loretta. And thank you for watching. And I've got more of those videos over here, I guess, if they are available, about this series. So you can check those out. And I'll see you in one of those videos from Ajijic and La Paz. Wish you were here. Hasta luego.